Well, that went about the way that I thought it was going to go. The 49ers get mopped in Green Bay, falling to 5-6. And it seems like nothing went right from the jump of that game. We're going to talk about that game. We're going to talk about the state of the NFC playoff picture. And we're going to look a little bit into the future of some of the players on this team because it certainly seems like it's probably ready to move on from a couple big names. We're going to talk about those things plus more next on the post game rant. All right. Welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. And it's the post game rant, which means I got my guy David with me. What's up, David?
Hey, man, I'm feeling good. It's Thanksgiving week, getting ready to go down to Iowa. Might even go to the Iowa State football game, Brock Purdy's alma mater, on Saturday night with my dad. We don't know if we're going to do that yet. It's about 10 degrees at night down there. So my dad really wants to go, and I don't want to sit in that type of weather. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, we got a lot to talk about. 5-6, and I think the wheels are off.
Yeah, I would say so. Well, let's talk a little bit about this game. Shanahan had some interesting decisions, starting with the fact that he went with Brandon Allen, which we didn't know this, but apparently he had a broken finger on his non-throwing hand, but he's so much better than Dobbs that he just had to play him anyways. What do you think of that decision?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, and I'm going to preface this too. I actually thought Brandon Allen, obviously, he's to me a third string caliber quarterback in the NFL. All those things considered, coming in cold, what have you. I didn't think he completely took a dump. I mean, he's Brandon Allen, right? Yeah, I think not playing Josh Dobbs is odd when Josh Dobbs has been playing in the last several years. Was Josh Dobbs perfect last year as past or not? No, but played for the Cardinals, played for the Vikings, drove down the field and won some games for both of those teams. Also looked pretty bad some of those games. But Brandon Allen hasn't played in 3 years, and Brandon Allen has a broken finger on his other hand. And so I'm not going to take a dump on Brandon Allen. He comes in, he's did what he asked him to do. I didn't expect him to do more than that. And I don't know if playing Josh Dobbs is the panacea to this. They're not going to win that game anyway, in my estimation. But yeah, I think that most 49ers fans were kind of scratching their head at that. I don't know if Kyle, to be quite honest, really, I don't know if the 49ers are really that all in on winning right now. You kind of be surprised by that because you got CMC out there. Jordan Mason's not playing, but I just think that there's a little bit of realism in there and said, hey, let's see what Brandon Allen is. Kyle believes he might run a system better than Dobbs, but I think today just showed you that experiment's probably pretty pointless.
Yeah, I mean, they could have had prime Tom Brady back there today, and with everything else that went wrong, they probably would have lost that game. I don't know that, yeah, Dobbs wouldn't have made the difference. Even then, though, it still is very questionable to just confidently go into that game with a guy who has a broken finger and hasn't played real football in about 3 years. Yeah. When you've got Dobbs, who did play last year, was a backup, played quite a few games as a starter on multiple teams last year, and is not hurt. It's a sketchy decision. But even sketchier, in my opinion, is the fact that we continue to not see Jordan Mason. There was a funny stat at one point in this game where Jordan Mason touched the ball for the first time in this game and ran it off for 16 yards. At that point, he had 1 carry for 16 yards. CMC had 5 for 15. What the hell, man? What does Mason have to do to get on the field? And I know the film experts are, he doesn't hit the hole the right way. I don't give a damn. He produces, man. He's clearly a better runner at this point, at this stage of his career, compared to where CMC's at least for this year, based off of coming off the injury. Man, what the hell do we got to do to get some Jordan Mason?
Well, and shout out to our guy, Rich Madrid. I mean, and I know he says that a lot to me. We're DMing each other, but like you said, I don't really care. When we're looking at the production, I don't want to box score scout because there were a lot of other things that went into it. But Christian McCaffrey did a 11 carries, 31 yards. We've been seeing this the last 3 games. There's no juice. There's no explosiveness. There's no ability to get when there's blocking up front. And he can still have some contact balance and get through contact. But when we're talking about making things happen, you can just tell, man, that the twitch is not there right now. And again, Jordan Mason, his carries went down because he got stuffed for a couple plays too late in the game after it was all said and done, right? I think what Kyle's just not going to change. We've seen that from Kyle. We know that Kyle is going to use and abuse his players. CMC wants to be abused like that. Debo likes to be used like a wide back, but Kyle just doesn't really. He's never shown that he's that concerned for long-term health or keeping people fresh. He knows that CMC does do all the things that Jordan Mason doesn't when he's at his best, but CMC's not at his best. So I don't understand it. I saw somebody tweet out today about, hey, why couldn't we do a Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs balance? Look, those are two what I call that's like an elite running back tandem. And I'm not taking anything away from Mason, but they could still, it doesn't have to be 50-50. I mean,
no, nobody's asking for that. Yeah.
75-25. I mean, is an 80-20. There's just a series. I mean, even Kevin O'Connell, he had a 50-50 with Cam Akers and Aaron Jones last week, but this week it wasn't like that in Chicago. Aaron Jones had the lion's share of the carries and the snaps, but Akers still got in there to spell him and would play an entire series, play an entire drive. And we see Jordan Mason go in once, and it's like running back to the sideline. I mean, the kid is fresh. He's young. He's healthy. And when he got the ball, he made something happen. I just think that ship has sailed. I don't think unless CMC gets like quadrilateral Achilles tendonitis, unless he doubles up the bilateral tendonitis, I just honestly, even then, I mean, if he's got a pulse, he's going to play, and Jordan Mason's going to sit on the bench.
You like quadrilateral? That was good. That was really good, actually. Yeah, man. It's super. I mean, it's the same things every single week. It just doesn't matter. It hasn't mattered all season. No matter who's been playing, who's not, the problems still persist. Kyle Shanahan's questionable decision making, and it's just, I don't know, man. It's super frustrating. Let me get to a couple super chats, then we'll get to some of the mistakes in today's game. Jason says Mason has to go. He's making CMC look bad. Keith says, I've been saying since August it's 2020 vibes. Next year back to normal. That I don't agree with that, because this team, some of their big time players, and we're going to talk about them later, just aren't it anymore, man. And it's not another season of age is not going to help them, in my opinion. Cryptic says, don't get it. Backup QB and game plan is too lean into shotgun passing and not lean into CMC. Also, is Mason even on the team next year? We don't utilize him. Yeah, he's a restricted free agent, but I don't know that he is back, because they're going to have to match a contract and they're going to have to tender him. I don't know that they're going to do all of that. So I think there's a good chance that Mason's gone. Dave Barclay says, Jesse, play didn't change. I called 42-17, 10 minutes into the game, then said we don't even get 17. Lyle's awful. Matt said it today. Why have I been scored of this dude? He actually sucks on record. All right, fair enough.
The word is scared. The scared there.
Scared. Oh, scared. I thought it said scored. Was it not an O?
No, it was an A.
Listen, my eyes are really bad. I'm about 80.
And I took go ahead. I took an eye exam just 2 days ago, and I'm not even wearing my glasses.
I've got good eyes, which is terrible. I just can't I'm an idiot, really.
Yeah, that's true.
What's worse, having bad eyes or just being an idiot? You know what? I'll go with the lesser of two evils. By Victor says Lyle wants to save his butt, and he paid CMC money because he paid CMC money. Yeah, that whole thing was weird from the get-go. V-Ray says Hawks win. Yeah, they did. We're going to talk about that. Interesting implications there. JDM 408 says, I hope both Moody and Tabor told Tebow to lock in. Yeah, T.O. somewhere laughing right now. Sir Cash Money says, Jesse, did you know I'm a geologist? I'm pretty good too. I'm able to identify rocks by eating them. He has the funniest super chats, man. I don't know what the hell he's talking about, but they're always clever. They're always clever. Tommy says, fire all the coordinators, Jesse, immediately. What about the offensive coordinator? Should they fire him? Cryptic says, also, what's with the special teams? Every game we have a new punt returner, kick returner, no consistency. I think they made the right move with Pearsall today. We're going to talk about that too. Keith Murphy, the unbeaten, says, oh, I'm in hopes that we get younger. All right, that's fair. John Naylor says, Tuesday, he's talking about our roundtable is going to be lit, Jesse. Yeah, because your team won and mine didn't. Moises says, as fans who pay Shanahan's salary, we deserve to know why we started Allen over Dobbs. Kyle can't just brush this off. We, the fans, deserve answers. Don't worry. The media is going to let him get away scot-free. They won't ask him any tough questions. Why would they do that? It wasn't his fault. Nothing's his fault. Okay, let's talk about the mistakes in this game. Man, penalty galore. Turnovers, penalties, dropped footballs. I mean, again, I said earlier, if Tom Brady, prime Tom Brady had played, they still would have lost that game. You just can't overcome those things on the road. Dropped interceptions. I mean, it was as bad of a game as it could possibly be. Coaching, I'm sure you can blame that, all that, but it was awful. Absolutely awful. Probably the most undisciplined game that they've played all year, and that's saying something. What did you think about the mistakes in this game, David?
I just think it's a continuation of what we've seen. I think that the penalties, when they talked about it, wasn't the penalties for, we've seen that all year. But then the graphic that they had put out, it kept increasing. It was like a comedy of errors about how the most missed tackles in a quarter. Then it was the most missed tackles in a half of the entire season. Then it was, and it's just an undisciplined team continuing to show their lack of discipline. This is not something where the wheels fell off today and they haven't been. And where does the buck stop? Like, people say, hey, execution's on the players. And I mean, I agree with that, right? Like a false start on the line of scrimmage. I mean, the coach isn't making you do that. I get all that. But at some point, the cumulative lack of discipline manifesting in your penalties, your missed tackles, just all these other faux pas that are nullifying yards or giving up big plays, dropping picks, dropping passes. Brandon Allen, I mean, didn't play well, but there was a couple plays. Like, he threw some seeds today. There was a couple plays that would have gone for first downs, and we got guys right through here, eyes right through the hands, like boink, Three Stooges. I mean, I'm sorry, when you got a third string quarterback kind of guy in, your guys got to help him out. I'm sorry. And so I think that it's not surprising. That's the problem. Like, this is something, and as I'm watching the game today, I'm cheering for the 49ers, but just like CMC, I don't got any juice either. I have no expectation that this wasn't going to play out the way that it did. I didn't expect them to play disciplined. And I think that's the thing that's really bothering me, is that I didn't used to feel that way. I used to get more mad about it. Now I'm just like, well, that's to be expected.
I forgot about the back-to-back 12-man on the field thing. I'm like, how did we forget that?
I tweeted about it. I mean, I said I'm 42 years old. I know I'm a little bit older than you, just a little bit. Okay. In my 42 years on earth, and I'm racking my brain. And my dad was a college football referee. He was a officials association in central Iowa and did JUCO D2, D3 college. Watched a lot of football with him. Watched a lot, just as you would watch as a referee, right? So I'm always watching a game from a referee standpoint. And I don't think I've ever seen a game where there's been two consecutive 12 men on the field. And this is the NFL. My son plays sixth grade football. Your son plays football. You coach your son, right? I haven't seen that in Pony League here in northeastern Minnesota. I haven't seen that in central Iowa flag football where I was growing up. I haven't seen that at Iowa State. Go Cyclones. PJ Fleck rowing the boat. He doesn't have his guys doing that for the Gophers. I'm just, And for to have it on 2 consecutive plays in the red zone, it's just it eclipses my capacity to comprehend.
Wow. I just read real quick. Sorry, it just popped
Please.
up that 10 teams have reached out to Daniel Jones, and one of them wants him to play for him right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, who's that?
I don't know. maybe it's the 49ers. It potentially could be.
And can we? I mean, we will talk about that briefly. I don't want to, but the Daniel Jones thing, I get it. Good for business. Got to look. We got to check out what's under the hood. All this, like, you think Daniel Jones coming in cold from a? I mean, it's not completely different, but it's not the identical system. He's not going to come in. It's Kyle's playbook. It's like 5 Bibles thick. Okay, like this is not. You think the guy who's born cross-eyed? Like he invented cross-eyed football memes. You think that guy? Oh, he's got some athleticism. Oh my God, man! So is Josh Dobbs. Like, what are we doing here? Like, it's not. I get like you want to get him in the offseason. Maybe he'll grow into a backup. There's Sam Darnold experience. If they wanted Sam Darnold, they could have afforded him as a backup. Sam Darnold didn't cost anything for the Vikings. They could have made that as a contingency plan. They didn't. Right? I don't think they care. And if they want to bring in Daniel Jones, I'm sorry, like whatever. Oh, we're going to get the 7th pick. I don't know. If it happens, it happens. But I think it's a little odd that people are just like, we got to have him. It's smart.
Yeah, whatever. It's Daniel Jones. Daniel Daughtry says, I can't imagine how much the parents hate Jesse's coaching. Well, I do take from my mentor. Wow. So I don't play the best players and I often blow 10-point leads. So yeah, they love me though. I mean, there's half the parents like stand up for me and like fight for me. And then the other half just absolutely hate me. It's a fun time though.
And when your parents come to you and ask questions at the banquet that are legitimate, you condescend to them and you gaslight them and you make them feel like they are in the wrong. They're in the wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. He's like, one of the parents was like, so, why did they score on my kid? I'm like, when we were in cover 2, and he's like, well, I mean, it was the one play where they scored. And we were in cover 2, right? Were we in cover 2? Oh, you don't even know the coverage? Get out of my face.
And you should do that. I like that. I don't think parents should get a free pass. I think if they don't look, I'm sorry. You're here. It's a learning experience, and tough love and shame is all the rage. I'm a teacher. I should know. Okay, I shame students every day of the week, twice on Sundays.
Moises Rosales says, thoughts on Daniel Jones if Purdy is out this week? We just talked about it. He's not moving the needle.
Don't care.
Official B&A Music says the spreadsheet said that we had solid QB just a few months ago and is now crashing out on X for Purdy. Laugh out loud. Also, Kyle finally called a screen, but CMC fumbled. Shaking my head. Him and Debo went from studs to suds.
Well, I want to say that though, my guy B&A, by the way, he's a great musician. CMC fumbling. I think what CMC was trying to do there was just get those Super Bowl vibes back. It's like, he's fumbled in the Super Bowl. He fumbles it against the Pack. It's like, just get that. It's like, hey, even we can take a dump. Like even your best players can completely, just be undisciplined. I like that. Mm-hmm. It's like, it doesn't just have to be Dominic Cooney getting 3 penalties. It doesn't have to be people dropping picks, Eric Saubert, like slipping on the grass, or just Debo not locking in. I like that. Good leadership.
That's how you win, man.
Yeah, it is.
Moises Rosales says, okay, optimism. As bad as today is, we are only 1 game back in the division. Get Purdy, Dobbs, or Jones versus Buffalo. Okay, let me ask you this, David.
Sure.
We'll get to them being 1 game back, but let's just talk Buffalo for a second, because I didn't have it on the docket for this evening. But it is a good question. Let's assume best case scenario, everything goes in their favor this week. They get Purdy back. They get Trent back. They get Bosa back. They even get Greenlaw back. He's activated, ready to go.
Not happening.
Any shot that they beat the Buffalo Bills, even if those guys are on the field, in your opinion?
So Greenlaw's back. Purdy's back. Who else is back?
Bosa and Trent.
And my mom. I would say this.
Everybody.
Everybody. Honestly, it's not a given. Can the 49ers go into Orchard Park with a fully healthy team and compete with the Bills or win the game? Absolutely. We just saw the Chiefs almost losing in Carolina today. It can happen, right? But no, of course, none of that is an absolute guarantee. And I think that's the problem of the paradigm of which people look at the Niners fans in particular, is like, we only lose because you're hurt, or when the only team that makes mistakes are the Niners, and the other team could not have done this. I've heard this all week about hey, we could be 8-2. Yeah, we could also be 3-7. Right? Like
I've been saying that all week. We could be 3-7.
You have? Yeah. I mean, this is just like, and I could go back and show all of these things. It's like I remember that was like Jimmy Garoppolo's dropped interceptions. We couldn't talk about that because it was woulda, coulda, shoulda, right? But we want a woulda, coulda, shoulda 8-2. It's complete BS. You look at this team. This team is not an almost 8-2 team. Like, and look at the Minnesota Vikings are 9-2. Okay, they're 9-2. If you look at the Minnesota Vikings, they're a fine team. They're not as good as that record right now. They're just not. And they're fine. The Packers are 8-3. They're not a juggernaut. That team that you watched today on the field, the Green Bay Packers, did not impress me that much. Defensively, they didn't impress me. Jordan Love, who I like, he made a couple throws the guys dropped, but his decision making was.
He does this every game. He does it every game. He's like a turnover merchant, but he throws a lot of touchdowns too. So it's like,
so it goes both ways, is what I'm saying. Like all these things we could have, should have, would have. No, man, this team is 5-6. To be quite honest, Jesse, they're lucky to be 5-6. Like this looks like best case scenario, a 5-6 team.
Yeah.
So
yeah, this is a 7-10 team written all over it.
Oh, of course. Like. And the Buffalo Bills without these guys. And by the way, they ain't gonna be fully healthy. Brock could come back. Look, I'll tell you, man, it's gonna be cold next week. Weather forecast can be.
I think it's supposed to snow.
It could be snowing before and after. It's gonna be the 20. It's gonna be in the 20s. Okay, it's gonna be cold, and if that ball's wet, and Purdy's wet football career is. Look, I don't care if Nick Bosa comes back, Trent Williams comes back. This is not a game. They're coming off their bye. I know we're going to talk about that, but this Buffalo Bills game is now the next must-win game. Feel like we've been going through a litany of these games. Today was the big must-win, obviously, and it was never going to happen. But next week, I think, is that shoe that drops. Even though it's an AFC, it's non-conference. You go 5-7. It's just you have to be perfect, and everybody else has to lose when you want them to lose.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most frustrating thing about this season is that you look at the NFC is better, clearly better than it was last year.
Yes.
But even then, the bottom half of this playoff, it's like Washington isn't a great team. Green Bay is not a great team. The Vikings, very good record, but they've been beatable. And then obviously the NFC West, it's like even with all the opportunities in the world, it seems pretty clear at this moment the 49ers are still not going to make the playoffs. And that is the most frustrating thing because it was right there in front of them.
Yeah, and I think that you'd say don't cry over spilt milk, but I think that's the thing. And I know you were talking this week and fielding some questions from some people who doubted that you had actually said what you said when you said it. Mm-hmm. After the Super Bowl. Look, people like to say, hey, let's not belabor it. Let's not beat a dead horse. This is why winning a Super Bowl when you're the better team matters. Yep. This is why winning when you're healthy after you've been beating people into the ground, like CMC's usage, matters. And if you don't think that CMC's bilateral tendonitis is not directly connected to the amount of volume that he has gotten in 2022 and 2023, I want what you're smoking. And I don't even smoke. Okay, like this is and so this is what you're seeing right now. And I think what the 49ers have to really confront, and I don't know if Kyle will or the Yorks will or John will, but there's this very distinctive reality that your best play might be to say, wait a minute, look at the young pieces around us. And I'm not talking about even the Fred Warners. Fred Warner's a veteran piece, not going anywhere. I'm talking about the young pieces and starting to think, hey, what's our best option going forward, and not give up the ghost of backing into the playoffs and pulling off some Wally Pipp like miracle. I think you have to be honest with who's the competitors around you and what you're seeing around you. And by the way, the NFC is much better than 49ers fans. I talked about this last week. Much better than 49ers fans asserted and told me it was in this summer. And I would argue much better competitively than the AFC. So I don't know. I'm struggling to see where this team goes with a loss to Buffalo. And I think the nail's probably in the coffin already. And we can just pull the plug next week if they lose.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to be optimistic playing a Buffalo team on the road. Mind you, the 49ers are going to go from Green Bay. They're going to go back home, and then they're going to travel all the way across the country again to play Buffalo.
Yep.
You've got Buffalo coming off of a bye, getting some key players back themselves, and it looks like it's supposed to snow. Give me Josh Allen in that scenario, no matter what. I'm sorry.
And Josh Allen's going to run. Josh Allen is a guy who's not afraid, and he's actually smart. When people are always worried about him as a runner. He's a guy that is not reckless the way that he runs, like a lot of other quarterbacks in the NFL are. Like Brock Purdy is, to be quite honest, which is how he got hurt his shoulder with Ernest Jones. This team is going to be regardless of the weather. That Buffalo Bills team is coming off a bye week. They are going to be amped. They are going to see what happened to the Chiefs after they beat them and they went into Carolina. Like they're going to have that confidence that said they played like that against the Carolina Panthers because they donkey stomped them last week, and they're going to come into the Niners and say, "Hey, this is a Super Bowl team last year. We're going to take our last two games are the Chiefs and the Niners. The last two teams that were playing for a Lombardi, we're going for a Lombardi. We're going to show both of those teams that we mean business." I really honestly think that they're going to be up for that game. They're not going to overlook the Niners. And guess what? If you saw the run defense today and the Swiss cheese that it was offering for most of the game against the Green Bay Packers, you think the Buffalo Bills are afraid? You think that you think they're not going to be ready? I think the Bills are going to put the screws to the Niners next week. And I think at that point, there's going to be a lot of introspection and and we'll talk about the other opponents they're playing afterwards.
Well, Buffalo's fighting for the number one seed, so they definitely have a lot to play for in that game. A lot to 100%. Play. And you're right. I mean, you go into the bye week playing Kansas City, the team that won the Super Bowl. You come out of the bye week playing the team that was in the Super Bowl. You win those two games. It's like, man, what? All right. Talk about confidence for a team. So we'll see. But I don't like their chances, even if they get all those guys back. I really don't. But I do want to ask you this.
Sure.
What do you think happens with Purdy? I'm going to lay out what I think is going to happen. Either he plays against Buffalo, right? Like he's healthy enough to play against Buffalo, or he's done for the season. I don't think there's any in between. I don't think it's, hey, he misses Buffalo. Hey, he might be back for Chicago or the Rams. I think it's either he's going to be good enough to play against Buffalo, or the injury is significant enough to where they're just going to shut him down for the season. What do you think?
No crystal ball. I think that the injury that Purdy has is not there's more concern about his injury than the Niners are letting on. Yeah. The Niners I'm going to circuitously get to it, but the Niners for 2 weeks didn't tell anybody about Brendan Allen's broken finger. Trent Williams was like, despite hopeful, there was no hope behind the scenes for Trent Williams playing today. Nobody that we talked to thought he was going to play today. Right? Nick Bosa, these things the Niners subvert. And I was talking to Jeff Mueller, a PT, a Niners fan. I was chatting with him before we got on the show. And I said, hey, the Niners subvert that process all the time. Stop believing in Santa Claus. I know it's the holiday season, right? But this idea that the Niners are not up front most of the time about anything. And particularly about the health of their players. So I don't believe Purdy is healthy. I also believe up here, Purdy is a strong-willed individual, but I also know up here he knows he's not there. His elbow is an issue. His shoulder is an issue. And it happens to be his throwing arm. I also think the weather forecast is significant. Kyle is not an idiot. Cold weather is not good. I live in a cold weather climate. Trust me, I don't want to bring up 42-year-old social studies teacher, but it just is what it is. Like there's a reason why when we retire, we're getting out of here. And I love it here, but we just, things get aggravated. And also Brock doesn't play well with a wet ball. And if there is any snow, you're telling me that every time we've seen Brock play with a wet ball, and he has played like absolute garbage. And yes, that is not hyperbole, people. He does not play well with a wet ball. He did not play well with a wet ball at Iowa State. So you're going to say you got the elbow fatigue, you've got the shoulder issue, and you're going to go into a situation where it's cold and possibly wet, and that's the recipe for success for a guy that's nursing that pain and nursing. I don't buy it. I also think his injury is a little bit worse. I don't think Purdy plays next week. I think Purdy wants to play next week. And I think Purdy also feels like, and because he's a warrior, Purdy is a tough dude. Purdy came back from elbow surgery, he shredded it, and he came back way faster than any of us thought. Right? And he wanted to show, and so that bodes well for him. Maybe he does heal quicker than a lot of other people, but right now, I don't know. And I think that if you put him out there compromised in these conditions, I don't know if that ends well for you. So yeah, I think that there's a high likelihood that he might be shut down. And I think if things go south in Buffalo, I think that will, even if he plays, precipitate the Niners shutting him down and maybe shutting some other people down as well.
Well, I'm looking at the forecast now.
Yep.
So Monday morning is also important to look at because sometimes, things shift a little bit. Yep. Monday morning, it's supposed to snow in Buffalo and be around 32 degrees. Mm-hmm. Sunday's high is 32 degrees. And Sunday night, which it is a primetime game, right? It's Sunday night, I believe.
Yeah.
25 degrees with a 46% chance of snow, wind around the 11-mile-per-hour mark. That doesn't bode well.
And depending on your forecast, I'm looking at one right now that's saying 50% chance of snow during the day, about an inch, and at night, another 50% chance with another inch, 15 to 20 mile per hour winds, low, like basically it's going to be low to mid 20s. Wind chill probably in the teens to single digits, depending on the gust. Like this isn't, I'm not trying. I know people are kind of watching this and they're thinking like we're trying to be pessimists or things like that. Like, no, man, like this is a 5-6 team with a quarterback who clearly has a compromised throwing arm in both joints, and does not have a history of playing particularly well in cold or wet conditions. It's just, so you put him out there, that's fine. If he wants to prove that he's tough, that's great. And I actually respect that. I just don't know if it's going to matter. And I think that the Buffalo Bills are one of those teams where it was between I picked the Ravens to face the Niners in the Super Bowl this year. Mm-hmm. The Bills were a team I picked to be in the AFC Championship game. The more I look at it, the more I'm seeing that I probably should have picked the Bills. But that was my pick at the beginning of the year. And I think that they're going to really, I think Josh Allen is on a mission right now. And I think that whole team is going to be ready to play on Sunday Night Football, prime time.
Yeah, I think so as well. Matt Sanders says, beginning of the end for Kyle Shanahan and Lynch. The Yorks care about one thing overall, and that's money. Bad team equals no playoffs, equals decreased revenue, and no ticket sales. Well, you're a season ticket holder. I mean, you and I have had talks about you not being a season ticket holder potentially in the future.
I'm not going to be next year. They increase our prices just in my section, lower level, which are good seats, 50% from 23 to 2025 next year. I talked to my guy Jules, who sits right behind me. He's got a seat for him and his wife and his 2 kids. Lives outside of Sacramento. He's got to drop in February. It's like you got to say, hey, am I ready to drop $12,500 on a team that I don't know the certainty? I don't know the future at quarterback. I don't know where we're at, right? And so we both talked today. I said, I'm going to put my license for sale. The Yorks make money. This team is one of the wealthiest franchises in all of sports around the world. Playoffs, making one playoff game or two, that's a drop in the bucket for the Niners, man. But you're right. The Yorks don't care about much else than money. But they're going to make money hand over fist anyway, because our fan base, by and large, has shown that we've been pretty good with just second best. And the Yorks know that makes money just the same as winning a Super Bowl. So,
plus what? Super Bowl, World Cup, the whole, they're.
Oh yeah, Super Bowl 2026. They're making money. World Cup 2020. Yeah, big time.
Yeah. Yep. Brother Bob says, Dave, yep, I expect to lose now. Jesse, you want one more year? Brother Bob has a listening issue. He didn't listen to what I said, Brother Bob, but yeah, one more year. SPX Spider. I don't even know. All right. Anyways, we're signing Daniel Jones, Montana. That was a stretch. I like it. Moises Rosales says, we seriously fire Wilkes for this? How many holding calls? 38 points dropped. Shame on Kyle Shanahan. Shame on the defensive players for throwing him under the bus.
Well, and also this week, people focus on the box scores. Christian Watson dropped a dime, it was not a wing and a prayer. It was an absolute dime from Jordan Love. Then Romeo Doubs, who got hurt, those yards don't go in the box score. Those penalty yards, those don't go in your total offensive yards. So it makes it look like and that was a dime that was going to be caught, if not for the DPI and so. Yeah, the defense didn't play well, but at the end of the game, it was Brandon Allen fumbling, CMC fumbling, short fields. It wasn't great all around.
Matt Sanders says 49ers aren't making the playoffs. If they do, they get bounced quick. Get real. The number of mistakes, lack of leadership. This is a franchise in decline. Yeah, I agree with that.
100% agree.
RS says, so is it too early to talk draft? No. Asking for a friend. I'm thinking we can get a fourth for Tyshawn Samuel, player formerly known as Debo. I don't think so. I don't think anybody's given up a fourth for that guy.
Hell no.
I don't see
man.
it.
He's look, can we just talk about Debo just for a quick minute? Are we okay with that? Or
well, let's just go to the Debo CMC conversation.
Perfect segue, yeah. Man. Whoever that last comment was from. Look, I'll be real with you. It rubbed me the wrong way. Oh, I had so many people calling me soft. Oh, you must not have played organized sports. Okay. Debo has been one of the most unchecked players in this locker room since the day he got drafted. Kyle and John know what he can bring to the table, and he's an absolute beast. He's a dog, whatever you want to say. I mean, Debo was 101, an absolute freak with the ball in his hands, all those things, right? But because of that, they also knew when they're doing their scouting about the type of person and personality that Debo is. And they knew that sometimes you got to and part of that actually isn't necessarily bad. Like people thought Bill Belichick treats everybody player the same. Here's the thing, man, is teaching and coaching, you do have to hold the standard for everybody. You don't want that, but there are times where you have to understand that when you're teaching, it isn't all equal, right? Like there's different kids need different ways of being motivated, different way. It's not cookie cutter. That being said, Debo has been immune to a lot of things. First Super Bowl. Who's partying all week with Emmanuel Sanders? Oh, that's Debo. Brandon Ayuk goes out, misses curfew by 10 minutes. Oh, he misses a game with Trey Sermon, right? BA saw that. People know this about Debo. Debo, behind the scenes, there's just things about Debo's personality that always, be like, okay, he's a little bit rough around the edges. But when he puts his hand on Tabor Pepper's throat and you're telling him to lock in, look, Tabor Pepper's a long snapper. Who cares, right? You know what? But it's a teammate. And it's a bad look. And the fact that I had so many people thinking it wasn't a bad look is odd to me. Especially when Debo Samuel comes back in the last two games, has completely laid an egg. Completely laid an egg. Dropped a huge pass from Brandon Allen today, would have been a first down. Can't gain any separation. Debo can't end around? Are you kidding me? Debo's, let's be real, guys. Debo hasn't put up a line on this team. When's the last time Debo went out there, line up? Kyle won't put him in X. He can't. That's why he said Juwan Jennings is the X now. Jennings is outpacing him in every game, out targeting him. Debo's cooked. There is not a team out there that wants to trade for Debo Samuel or his contract. None.
Yeah, I'm sure if he gets cut, somebody would pick him up for sure. But there's nobody's trading for him. No. I'm not. Why would you give up a fourth with that contract? Absolutely not.
But shouldn't that tell you though? Shouldn't that? That's what I always ask people. You talk up a player, and I said, hey, what would they get in a trade? Mm-hmm. Who would be lining up for the person that you're worshiping? Who are you saying that this person is so unimpeachable? Who else, if the shoe was on the other foot? If this person played for the Tennessee Titans or the Jacksonville Jaguars, right? Would you want to trade for them? Look, and again, Debo is an all-time 49er. No doubt about it. Pound for pound, game for game, what he brought to this team, he is an all-time special 49er. But Bill Belichick actually did do this well. He learned how to move on and sell high and not be sentimental with veterans and not be like, hey, we're going to keep you around just to keep you around. And keeping Debo around, I mean, I'm sorry, man. Guy doesn't think it stinks. But when he keeps on like laying eggs all over the field, nobody calls him out because nobody's ever called him out for anything. And I'd rather see Ricky Pearsall getting reps over Debo Samuel right now as a receiver, 100%.
Yeah. Before I go any further, I do want to give a shout out to the 1,522 people watching between X and right here on YouTube. Really appreciate y'all for tuning in.
Crowd.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very, very humbled. Much appreciated. Thank you all. But yeah, I agree. I think that drop was a microcosm of exactly what it's been this season for Debo. And I even got a text from a friend who's way, way, way more of an optimistic fan than I am. Known him since we were like 6 years old, Niner fan as well. And he texted me, he's like, dude, Debo's got to go. He's like, he can't separate. He can't catch. He doesn't run good routes. It's clear. And we'll see if CMC can get it back next year. I have a hard time believing that at then 29 years old that he's just going to bounce back and be great again. But it seems like CMC might be on his way to being quote unquote washed as well.
It's
not an
exaggeration, Jess. When you watch the game today, did you ever feel excited? Like, did you ever feel like, hey, look at me. Seriously, I get BA's been hurt all year. I understand that, but you still, I mean, CMC and Kittle and Juwan and Debo. I mean, like, honestly, like, yeah, Trent Williams isn't out. That actually, though, to be quite honest, wasn't even that big of an issue today. Like, left tackle wasn't a big problem. Part of that's because the Packers' defensive line didn't get a lot of pressure most of the time until late in the second half. But this idea that guys around the league, you have to give up the ghost. What you're seeing is what you're going to get. The trajectory is not perpetually upward. And I think what you're seeing right now is you think this is like, and I'm not even talking about plateauing. There's a distinct possibility that this plateau it goes down from here, right? And so this is why you win when you need to win. And so the 49ers, what I fear about the 49ers is that they are going to be too stubborn and they are going to be too sentimental and they are going to make decisions that are emotional. And I'm all about, hey, I'm a pro-labor guy. I believe about paying, respecting people for what they've done for you. And I am all about that. These guys should not be just thrown to the curb like in the organization, but we traded Joe Montana at one point, right? Jerry Rice didn't finish out his career as a 49er. I will say I think CMC is done. I don't think, doesn't mean he's not going to go get a touchdown here or there the rest of the season. The CMC that you saw last year in 2022, and that's over. And the Debo that it's over. And as soon as the 49ers can actually confront that and move on from that and rip off that Band-Aid, the better it's going to be for the future. But I fear that they're not going to do that. And it's already evident because Kyle isn't willing to give guys like Isaac Guerrero or Jordan Mason any run, even though they're fully healthy and have shown acumen through the early and mid-season.
Man, it's super, super frustrating to watch. And you talked earlier about how I had to defend one of my takes. Somebody, didn't believe that I had said right after the Super Bowl that they should retool. And then again, after the loss to the Chiefs. But to me, it's been clear. Like, this team is not it anymore. The window closed. You had your best chance last year, and it's not going to get any easier. And the faster you realize that, and the faster you move on from the Debos and the CMCs and, the Trents even. And listen, Kittle's been playing phenomenal, but he's not going to be a part of that next wave of winning, unfortunately. I just don't think it's going to happen. He's going to be, probably 34 years old before they can compete again. So you have to make those tough decisions, and you have to get value for players that aren't going to be a part of that next wave while you can. You just have to if you want to compete. It's a cutthroat business, and I love all these guys, man. They've given us some great years, some great memories, a lot of fun. These guys have been the reason that the 49ers have won games. I understand all of that, but you can't get sentimental when you are making decisions about the future of this franchise. The faster they move on from these players, the faster it is that they can rebuild, retool, however you want to go about that. And the fact that they hung on this year, you're right. It doesn't give me any confidence that they're going to do it this offseason either. And if they don't, you just keep pushing things back. And that's super frustrating because I feel like this young nucleus can build, grow together. And if they draft well over the next couple of years, they could be something. But if you let these big contracts from these players that aren't the same continue to hamper you, it's just not going to work out. You can only overcome so much in the salary cap era. And that's something that worries me.
Well, and part of that is the culture of this team, which I think heretofore had been like, hey, relatively unimpeachable. But there's a core of veterans that I think clearly, who could argue that the 49ers have not had success over the Kyle Shanahan tenure, right? Like they have had success as an organization. We get that. And I commend the 49ers organization for being in that position to give fans a reason to be excited. I am, again, there's a reason I'm a season ticket holder. Okay. I started in 2018, right after they traded for Jimmy G. Right. And there comes a time where you have to call a spade a spade. And I look back, I'm 42. The Niners won the Super Bowl in 1994. Right? Ricky Waters scored a bunch of touchdowns that Super Bowl, right? Jerry Rice, none of them finished with the 49ers. Charles Haley wasn't on that team. Charles Haley was my GOAT as a defensive player for the 49ers. Won Super Bowls, finished with the Cowboys, right? Joe Montana. I mean, these Deion Sanders, the 1 year rental. I mean, the memories I have of him being in that 94 team and gone, right? I think that there's a core of veterans in this team that are leaders. I get it, but they've become larger than life to the point where they're almost untouchable even as they age. And it's like we want to build statues out there, but they haven't won any Super Bowls. And again, I'm not even blaming them, but we have to get past that mentality. And does that mean if you do that you might not win as many games, right? Yeah, probably, right? In the short term. But at this point, and I know people think we're being fatalistic. You guys, I want to ask everybody watching, the 1,500 plus that are watching right now, do you think in your heart of hearts, if you, after this just turned off and you go to bed, you're looking in the mirror, you're brushing your teeth, you say, hey, this is a Super Bowl contending team as it's constructed? You're not going to think it.
Yeah, well, you shouldn't. I mean, you shouldn't think that things are just going to get better next year. Oh, just, they'll just miss the playoffs and they'll rest and then they should be good. No, it's going to take much more than that. And I think the 49ers need to realize that as well, but we'll see. We will see. I mean, they did it with Armstead. Will they be willing to do it with the Hargraves, the Debos, the CMCs? We're going to find out. The Juices, I don't know. Dave says, did you just say 7 and 10? That's interesting. I know that's been your rallying cry. Brother Bob says, Jess, I guess I owe you a hat. What do you want? A bet's a bet. We'll worry about that later. I'm not too worried about any of that. Dave Barclay says, you owe me a hat too, Brother Bob. Give him his hat. Kent says, when does firing Kyle for Ben Johnson become likely? It's not. And why would Ben Johnson want to come to this team that clearly needs to go through a retool mode? I wouldn't want. He was super picky the last 2 coaching cycles. We really think that he's going to come to Santa Clara when this team is clearly at the end and has to be gutted a bit and then retool? Really probably aren't super competitive for a couple years or so, it seems. I don't know that I would want that to be my first job. And I don't think that Ben Johnson is going to want that to be his first job. And that's assuming you fire Kyle, which I don't think they're going to do either. Miguel says, watching your stream of Kyle's articles in Washington, Atlanta, and him unwilling to play the best players over friends. I'm done with him here in San Francisco, Jess. Yeah, we had a stream this, and in fact, it picked up a lot of steam this week because I had reposted it. But it was myself and Coach. We did a show about the real Kyle Shanahan, and we read articles from all of his past stops. And everything that we're frustrated with Kyle Shanahan was exactly what those organizations were frustrated with. He hasn't changed. It's really interesting.
Yep.
Dave Barclay. Yeah, go ahead.
No. I was agreeing with you.
Dave Barclay says, okay, Jess, what have I been saying? I listen to Sunil more than once a week, and I still don't get him. I called this year and this game. It's easy. Lyle's decisions equal these outcomes. Bad all around. Well, I'd say you've been about right so far. Brother Bob says, yep, Bills will have rest differential, and we are trash. Okay. Daza says, at least we were consistent today, consistently awful in all three phases and coaching. Good silver lining. Mark says, I got zero respect for guys like Lenore who want to talk and talk all week but can't walk the walk. Him and the defense got punked from the start. Listen, I know Lenore was like this in college. I'm Oregon Duck fan, fully aware, but he's continued to be like this because that is the culture.
Yep.
When you got leaders like Debo
Yep.
consistently coming out over the years and talking the way that they talk after they lose games, after they lose in NFC championships, when they're not even playing because they're hurt, the culture has been set. And so when Demo, who is young and impressionable by these leaders in the organization, comes out and does what guys like Debo did, you shouldn't be surprised. That is what's allowed by this coaching staff. And it shouldn't be acceptable, in my opinion.
And you're right. And I think that with Debo, who I also, well, my wife is such a wonderful, but look at this old fashioned. Oh,
Jesse,
oh
say hi.
yes. Oh, yes. She says hi to Jesse.
I heard.
Yeah. I mean, service with a, and she closed the doors. I was going to tell her service with a smile. But you hit the nail on the head, Jess. I love Debo Lenore, and I also think that part of that attitude makes him who he is, right? I could also say that might make Debo who he is. I will say this. I love Debo Lenore, and I thought it was punk move to go up to Kenneth Walker last week, start it all. And Kenneth Walker's like, what's going on? Okay, I'm going to lift you, pick you up, and put you on your. And then to be like, hey, calling him like, hey, I'm going to come out. And like, bro, like, you got punked. He took you out, and then they won.
Yeah.
And that's the culture. That's Cabo Boy culture. I'm serious. I'm not even I used to be the Cabo Boy. I'm dead serious. This is the 49ers culture. The 49ers is entitlement, braggadocious, like just, it doesn't matter the results. We're still the best. Fred Warner, bless his soul, went on with his wife on their podcast and talking about, yeah, we're this outstanding team that just happens to be, I'm like, bro, say less. This is Micah Parsons energy, man. Like that, we're the doubt. We're supposed to be the San Francisco 49ers. We're Dallas Cowboys now. We're like Debo Samuel sitting on his podcast speaking in monotones. I'm tired of it. But that's who this culture is. That's who this team is. And so when Debo comes in, even Nick Bosa said, and look, I will say this about Nick Bosa, man. Nick doesn't do that. And one thing that Nick does, he even said, it was kind of like this, like old school, like almost like he was like this grandpa. Because he loves Demo. He said, that guy's a dog. He said, but he came in, and I think he called him like an airhead, something like some weird, like old school or some kind of because he was like, he knew that Demo came in, and he's like, oh, arrogance and whatever else. And Nick's like, dude, like you kind of like need to kind of refine some of this energy into like actually taking care of business before you do that. So Demo's been taking care of business, but when the team collectively doesn't, the mission isn't just to go back out onto the street. It's to be like, hey, beat our chest after a loss. I mean, maybe I'm just raised in a different time. Like, I don't remember that being a thing. I don't remember. I love talking crap. I love talking trash. I want our Niners to do that. When you're losing, though, and when you're continually showing a lack of discipline, to go out there and act like, yeah, it wasn't right, but we'll come back next time. It's like, I'm sorry, man. Like, it's lame. And it's an energy that I think reflects the head coach of this team, Kyle Shanahan. And like an unchecked arrogance, mediocrity that struts is my favorite line. I've said it before. Confidence in nothing, mediocrity that struts. And that is what this team is. And as I tell my students every day, right on the board, you want to be mediocre, just do it in silence, man. You want to strut it, you want to flaunt it, okay, we got an issue. And that's what, and the teams around the NFL, they ain't getting punked by the Niners right now, man. They see it. And they look at that like, why would you be afraid of this team? They brag about losing. They brag about people putting them on their butt on national television. Who does? Like, what other team in the NFL is doing that? I don't know. The Cowboys.
It wasn't even just that whole interaction either. It was the play where Kenneth Walker got to the edge and shoved him through the turf. Stiff armed him straight through the turf. It's like, dude, I love you, man. And I've celebrated when you got picked. I celebrated when they re-signed you. Big fan of Demo. Loved him at Oregon. I'm a Duck fan, but dude, this is not it. No. This team, it's not it, man. When you're losing, you can't be I don't know. No. All day, every day, Kim says it's really messed up how Kyle abused Trey, running him like he should have been using juice. Kyle doesn't want to make Brock look bad since he's hitched his wagon to him. Well, yeah, whatever. I mean, I don't think Kyle's ever really cared about taking care of his quarterbacks or running backs for that matter. I mean, we talk about it every week. Talked about it with CMC. He's no different. But yeah, I mean, Kyle is on his, at least from the outside looking in, it appears to be his last quarterback. I hope he doesn't run through Brock Purdy as a quarterback, be like, all right, on to the next one and gets another chance. I think that would be crazy. But yeah, he just doesn't really care. I will say, though, every game that Purdy misses is better for the 49ers long-term pocketbooks. It is. Because let's say Purdy is shut down this season. 2 of the 3 seasons that you've played, you couldn't even make it through the end due to injury. I don't know that you get paid a lot of money if you do get paid, and I'm not sure that they even pay him this offseason. I mean, that things become really interesting, not just from a play standpoint, because we've talked about that ad nauseum, which I don't know that he's shown that he's worth that money anyways this year. At very least, I think he's shown that he's worth another look before they figure it out. But now you add an injury on top of it. This thing could get really interesting. Everybody loves Grant all of a sudden. Yeah, it seems to be that way when they lose. Dazza says Debo has one good year. He has one great year and a decent-ish year or two. Yeah. Matt Sanders says Debo puts more hands on teammates than passes.
But again, it's if just go back to that again though. Like that went under the radar, and there were a lot of players. Andrew Whitworth supported Debo. There were other players, but there was a great podcast by I'm forgetting that Oklahoma defensive tackle, wouldn't played for Gerald McCoy. Gerald McCoy and Kyle Van Noy actually were doing a podcast together, and they both unequivocally supported Tabor Pepper. They said, and they think that Debo's a dog, and they said, I love him as a player, but he said that would not fly. And you know, I was flabbergasted how that didn't get more pushback. You're a teammate, Tabor Pepper, and then as quickly as Kyle said, "Oh, Tabor Pepper overreacted." Like, I'm Tabor Pepper with my friends, man. I'm Tabor Pepper with my colleagues. I'm Tabor Pepper with like my students. That if you're making somebody else feel small, like isn't that the type of teammate you want? And I get he's just a long snapper, whatever, you know. But the idea of putting your hand on somebody's throat, I'm sorry, man. Like, I've been in a lot of, like, I actually was a college athlete. Like, I was like, man, if that shit ever happened to, like, there would be consequences. They talk about it. And they weren't even, it was right away. They put it on Tabor. And this culture doesn't work. I just want to tell people that this culture doesn't work. If you're winning, it does. If you're the Oakland Raiders in the 1980s, fine. And everybody's doing coke in the locker room. Yeah, I mean, it was crazy back then, right? It's a different time. It's like, this is not, this is not Bill Lane beer, right? And Dennis Rodman and Isaiah Thomas and the Detroit Pistons. And it's a different, it just doesn't work. It doesn't flow that way. And this culture needs to change. And I don't know if it will with the current veteran circle as it's constructed, because I just think that it, there's standards for certain players and there's standards for others.
It's not a Bill Belichick situation, huh?
No, not
Dave
at all.
Barclay says 2035 and Debo fat on the couch. I was good once. All right, chill out. I will say this about what you had said a few minutes ago about if they don't win a Super Bowl, which I mean, this cast of characters, this group, this core group is not winning a Super Bowl. It's very clear at this point. But I said it. I think it was last year. Was it last year that they celebrated the 2000? No, it was 2 years ago. I think they celebrated like the 2012 Niners at halftime or whatever. You know, it was like it was an afterthought. The 2012 Niners came out. They gave them a golf clap, gave them a little award show at a halftime at a random game, and then moved on.
Yep. Yep.
And I said at that time, if the 49ers that everybody is praising for getting as far as they do continue to lose, and since then they've lost another Super Bowl and another NFC championship, by the way.
Yep.
If that continues, in 10 years, we're going to look back on this regime and this time frame of the San Francisco 49ers, and we'll be giving them a golf clap at halftime and nothing more. Nobody's going to care. It's great now that we're like, oh, in the moment, I love this team and they've won, and oh my, how can you not just bow to greatness? But in 10 years, nobody cares. You know why? Because they didn't win a championship.
Yep. And 30 years later, Jess, I'm still a fanboy about Steve Young. I don't tag players. I'm on Twitter. Steve Young's made a tweet the other day, and I never do this. I'm 42 years old, right? I said, Steve, he had said something about, made some comment about a closer, about needing a closer. And he was being kind of critical of the 49ers not having a closer. He was being a little critical of Brock Purdy. Yeah. If you didn't read between those lines, you weren't reading it correctly. And not saying it was justified or whatever. And I said, hey, you were my closer as a fan, as a kid. It's like that. It was kind of like a fanboy moment. But like, you remember that stuff because those guys won, right? Like those guys, like it was. And I talk to people of all different generations. I talk to people my dad's age, my grandparents' age. I don't, even that old, like we're around for those victories, those Super Bowls. Like there's still that reverence for those guys that just is undying, right? But you're right. NFC Championship, second best, perpetual bridesmaids. Nobody gives a. Like, just seriously, in 10 years before sitting at Levi's Stadium, and a different iteration of this team is whatever, and all of a sudden they roll up George Kittle and CMC and Deebo Samuel and like honestly,
cool.
Yeah, no, exactly. It ain't gonna be like this 5 minutes like round of applause. It's gonna be like I gotta go to the bathroom.
Yeah,
No, seriously,
go get some pretzels and a beer real quick. Hold on.
They win the Super Bowl. That's a 20-minute ovation, right? Like, and that's the difference. And these guys don't. But our fan base, I'm going to be real with you guys. Like, the Yorks see that and they're laughing all the way to the bank. They know it. And to me, the way I look at this team going forward, I'm also realistic to realize it could be another 30 years. But if it has to be another 30 years, I mean, you have to start building towards getting that Super Bowl and start realizing that the odds of that happening now are so low with the current iteration of this team that it's best to rip off that Band-Aid and do whatever it takes to get back in this position again where you have a chance. Because right now, not with these vets, not with these gassed guys, not with these guys with, I'm sorry, it's just not happening.
Eric says, hey, Jesse, I found your channel from the roundtable, and even though I'm a Hawks fan, I love the content. Keep up the good work. Hawks rule. I appreciate you for showing me some love. Your Hawks got a big win today, man. Very, very big win. And their defense, all of a sudden, coming out of that bye week, Mike McDonald's got it figured out. And we knew it was a matter of time. At the very least, that defense was going to get it figured out. It was looking iffy. But now that he's got everybody healthy, and that team is humming on defense right now. They are looking very, very good. Gizmo Maltese says, end arounds don't work because this team can't block. What happened to the sweeps we used to see? Every sweep gets killed. Agreed. The window is closed. Brother Bob says, yes, Jesse, rebuild now. That includes Kyle Levy too. No, why would another coach want to come watch the end of this thing fade away? Matt Sanders says everything said regarding moving forward applies to Kyle too. Yeah, after next year, I think. Dave Barclay says, did you skip my super about 7 and 10, or am I jumping the gun? I think you were jumping the gun. Dazza says, did Mason personally insult Kyle Shanahan at some stage? He averaged 6 yards a carry and 3 carries over the last 2 games and 16 yards on the first carry this week and still can't get any burn, basically, is what you were trying to say. Yes, that seems a little weird. Gizmo Maltese says, Kyle is just a good OC. This team was nothing without Saleh or D'Amico. We should do whatever it takes to make Saleh or Spags to go get them. Our defense got exposed. Yeah, I mean, Saleh was helping Green Bay today. Sean McGee. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I want to tweet out a little bit here. Oh, no. Keep going, Jess. We'll get to this.
Okay. Sean McGee says Kyle is not going anywhere. Maybe he learns and makes adjustments this offseason, but the organization is making lots of money. Yeah, I don't think he's going anywhere either. Dave Barclay says, who was good? Kittle, Mason, Green, kinda, Lloyd? You mean Floyd? Lloyd? Yeah. Yeah, nobody was great today. Kittle was good. Kittle was actually good. Dave Barclay says, I've burned so many trees watching Lyle flop like a fish. Okay. See, my eyes are good. I'm just dumb. We figured it out. I was just dumb earlier. My eyes are great.
Just an idiot. Just an absolute moron.
I'm sorry. Who? Harbaugh, Shanahan, the era of almost. Man. Dave Barclay says, Jess, you just gave an intriguing scenario. What if Brock is Brock got mortared down and we draft a new QB and Kyle wants to start him? Oh, Brick mortared. Okay, I see. Ha ha ha. Very funny. I got it. But and Kyle wants to start him next year, unlikely being the rookie. What happens? Does everyone lose their mind? Yeah, I don't know. I think he's going to keep drafting quarterbacks, I would imagine. I don't know that he's going to draft them high. Eric says, to me, the culture comes from the coach. How much blame should go to Lyle for the bad vibes? A lot. Like I said, if you're allowing it, that's on the coaches. It is. Dave says, Dave, I'm still a fanboy of Steve Young, the best.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Steve Young is willing to hold the team accountable, and I wonder if Kyle is. And our guy Marco, he's going public, in the last after the game, and this talking about Brock's health and talking about who's going to ask Kyle. I think that's the culture of this team too, because I don't remember the culture growing up in the '90s of like the press conferences being a PR machine as much as it is now. This idea of, I mean, even remember Jim Mora for the Indianapolis Colts playoffs. We talk about those things that happened when you had what do I call it? Like a separation of church and state, so to speak, right? Like the separation of like the journalism, which is the fourth estate, and but we don't have journalism anymore. So Marco is asking, hey, someone please ask. He's yelling. Someone please ask Kyle about Brock's labrum. If he says he doesn't know the injury or severity of it, press him. He knows the severity of the injury. Exclamation mark. The media doesn't want you to know. Doesn't want, your fans do. And man, you and I, Marco's our guy, right? I've rarely seen Marco kind of lift the veil a little bit there, like going like just so Marco's putting that out there. Okay. Kyle knew about this, and there's more about this injury. Just let me tell you, like I got 2 kids. I don't want to lose all my money, but I put every dime that I own confidently that what the media launders for the 49ers is actually not what's going on with Brock. But yet hardly anybody save Kyle, like maybe Kyle Posey, Grant, right, are going to ask these questions. And it just, that's the culture of this team though, too. The culture of access. And if you're a player, if you want access, if you want to be on the inner circle, if you want a captain, by the way, like Captain Kittle playing awesome. By the way, I know Captain Kittle gets to talk to Coach Kyle. He gets to say what he likes and who he wants. And that's the culture here too, guys. I just want to let you know unequivocally. I put every dime that I own. That culture might work for you when everything's going well, but when things start to hit the fan, that culture starts to really come under the magnifying glass. And can this culture be sustainable? I don't think so. So something's going to change. I'm not saying get rid of Kyle. I actually think, but the question's about Kyle being a really good head coach, or is he a great OC? But then does he give too much power to veterans that have too much clout that get in the way of designing a team that is sustainable going forward? And I don't know if I could say it's not.
I am curious to see that press conference and if anybody asked him about it other than Grant. Yeah. How about that? Anybody other than Grant?
Yeah.
Anybody. My money would actually probably be on Larry. Dazza, Larry might. Dazza says, my favorite sports player was Olajuwon. I loved Hakeem Olajuwon. He didn't trash talk, always gave props to his teammates, and was great. Debo is all talk, out of shape, lacks effort, assaults his teammates, and has only had one great year.
You nailed it.
You said it, not me. Dave Barclay says, how many passes has Debo caught this year? Please. I don't know. I don't know the number there.
Well, today, Debo, I can tell you what he caught today.
Okay.
4 targets, 1 catch. Didn't have a carry today. You'd think with Brandon Allen behind center, you'd think there'd be some misdirection. There were only 2 running back, Christian McCaffrey and Jordan Mason. There were, including Brandon Allen. I'm not including Brandon Allen's scrambles. There were 14 rush attempts today. 29 pass attempts. And Debo Samuel 1 catch on 4 targets. Juwan Jennings had 7 targets, almost doubling him up. With 5 catches, quintupling him up. Guys, let's just be honest here. Brandon Allen's going to get the ball in the hand. You think he's going to try to force feed guys who can get open. Debo Samuel's not getting open, people. Debo Samuel's, he can't catch the ball when you throw it to him. He had a punt return because that wasn't a hold. It was a hold. It was a hold. Okay. People might, but like this, I'm sorry, man. Like,
Spider says Lynch goes before Kyle. We could have had Harbaugh. Yeah, I always said that. I don't know if that's still the case, but I did always say that we'll know that Kyle's on the hot seat when Lynch gets fired. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, it might be one of those things where they're both just exit stage right at the same time, but I always did feel that way. So if Lynch doesn't go this offseason, then maybe we're 2 years away from Kyle going. I don't know. Dave Barclay says, I'm asking if he's getting paid $1 million a catch. All right.
Oh, well. I mean, yeah, Debo's had 33 catches this. I don't know if 33 catches this year through 11 games. He's averaging 3 catches a game. He has 1 touchdown. Now, I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. So you either say that says something about Debo, or does it say something about the quarterback, or something about the offense? Like, when we're talking about guys, by the way, Debo only has 1 touchdown, and that's with CMC missing well over half the season. Or no, half the season. First 8 games. I'm like, you're a wide back, bro. What's going on?
We didn't even talk about the missed tackles. I mean, my gosh.
We haven't even got
how many missed tackles?
No. Well, if you could look it up, and they know by
10,
the end of the
10 in the first quarter is all I know.
10 in the first quarter was an NFL record. No, for this year.
For this year.
And then this year was a record for this year for 15 in the half. 15. And I'm sure multiple of them were on the same plays. I mean, D. Winters, bless his soul. I think you got somebody for a 4-yard loss. Josh Jacobs gets a 2-yard gain. These are the things that break your back, and they end up scoring a touchdown on the drive. I mean, you go from 2nd and 14 to 2nd and 8. That's a big deal, right? Like, it's a big deal, and it affects play calls, and affects dominoes fall in different ways. And this team is so undisciplined right now, but I honestly believe it because it comes from the veterans. And Debo's a magnetic personality, man. And there's no accountability. So
we're not going to get to it, but I do want a victory lap on one thing that I said.
Please
and I've been saying it since training camp, which is Ricky Pearsall needs to be the punt returner, man. Like, there was some difficult catches he made in the punt return game that would have been dropped by other players. They would have slipped, fall, whatever. And yes, his punt returns got called back because of holdings. But Ricky Pearsall's the best punt returner on this team.
Probably.
I fully believe that.
Ricky Pearsall needs to be more involved in the offense. I'm old enough to.
What is it? He hasn't had a catch in 2 weeks, right?
Let's go. Let me just take a look at this. Yeah, Ricky Pearsall was not even targeted today. Didn't get a single target. Chris Conley got a target. Couldn't find the ball. Wasn't that great? It wasn't a great pass.
It was
Eric Saubert. Eric Saubert had the ball go right through his hands, hit him in the face. Got a target. Kyle Juszczyk got a target today. All right. Right. You know, it's like Ricky Pearsall, number 1 pick, can't get a target. Ricky Pearsall, what I'm old enough to remember this offense using their players and their playmakers as decoys, misdirection, pre-snap motion, getting guys the ball in their hands in space. I don't know where that's at. I don't know what's happened to that. I don't. So
Daza says not only Debo drop passes, one drop led to a crucial interception today. Bench him. I want to see more Pearsall and Cowing. I would love to see the youth movement. I really would. Brother Bob says, why not cut and trade old players or trade Kyle Levy and let the new head coach build from scratch? It doesn't make sense to keep the main problem and let him draft again. I really liked, I had a caller, and we'll wrap on this one, David, but I had a caller on my call-in show this week, and I really liked his idea. And I don't think that they'll do it, but pairing my if Kyle's on the hot seat with they will fire John Lynch, and that's how you'll know Kyle's on the hot seat. He said, fire John Lynch, bring in a GM that you fully trust and allow him to take over the operations, including evaluating Kyle going forward. That way, you know, the draft is on him, all of that stuff. It's on the new guy. And then if he decides after a year or two that Kyle's not my guy, he can move on and go get the coach he wants. I actually kind of like that idea because I think that's the only way you can take some of the power away from Kyle while also keeping him here. You can't transition power to John Lynch knowing that Kyle's always been the head man. But what you can do is, hey, you're under contract. This is what we're going to do. Yeah. We're bringing in somebody else. They now call the shots, deal with it. That is a possibility. I don't think they're going to do it, but I love the idea.
Well, John Lynch has always been a person that I think 49ers need to understand as a baby kisser. He's a figurehead. He's singular purpose on this team is to use his media connections, his Hall of Fame connections. He's a player in the league for a long time, respected player in the league, but he has significant media connections through his time at Fox. And that matters because the 49ers love to launder and leak things through different people, use people as useful idiots. And John Lynch is really, really, really good at being a politician. And believe you me, the 49ers aren't at all. The organization would not blink in a heartbeat to worry about John Lynch's scouting. John Lynch is not a scout, right? He's never been a scout. He never went up through the scouting community, right? It's just, I just want to be real blunt with you. John Lynch also isn't the architect of every trade dimensional. It's just not the way it works. But he is valuable in that regard to the 49ers. And like you said, I think, will Kyle divest himself from some of this GM responsibility, like ad hoc that he is? I don't know. Was he willing to go the Andy Reid role and just coach and just call plays? I don't know. But I think that Kyle Shanahan, the GM, has its pluses and minuses, but I think right now, I think there needs to be some more equal power, and it's too much to take on, and something needs to change. I also think that the elephant in the room is I don't think we know that we have the answer at quarterback, but not a lot of people want to talk about that, or will ask questions about that.
You can't say that. You can't say that. In the 49er community, you cannot talk about Brock or Kyle in a negative fashion. I need you to stop that. Okay. Abstracts. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
No. I'm going to go do some push-ups because of that.
Abstract says Pearsall and Cowing ain't turning this team around. The argument is not that they're turning this team around. The argument is why not just play the young players and see what they've got. So as they enter the draft next year, they have a clearer picture of what these guys are and what they aren't. Maybe even they need to be replaced, but you don't know that if 100%. You don't ever play them. So anyways, that being said, we got a great Sunday night football game on. We should all be rooting for the Eagles. If the 49ers have any chance, any snowball's chance in hell, the Rams will have to lose today as well. So, rooting for the Eagles. David, thank you so much for joining me as always. Everybody in the chat, thank you so much for joining. I'll be back tomorrow with a film review. Much love. Peace.